All right, welcome everybody. If this is your first time at a BYOG party, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. You know, during these BYOG parties, which stands for, see, I got a special shirt made up, BYOG, and then I walk around and people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, I got it down below, but be your own guarantee, because I want to help people, help you, give you like drugless, natural therapies, tools, healthy living practices, so you can live a pain-free, drugless, healthy, active life. And of course, be your own guarantee for your health in your life. And so I invite colleagues and friends and people who know a lot more about certain tools and therapies than what I do. And that's definitely the case today with Dr. Rob Vanbergen. We've talked a few times, and I love his approach. You know, you can see back there, once he gets on the screen, pain-free for life. That's his. That live pain-free naturally. That's his company. That's the website. He's got a lot of interesting, a lot of cool therapies. But one I really want to touch on today, and that's why it's called the Microcurrent BYOG Party, is if you were on before I started recording and before Dr. Rob hopped on, I was playing the electric slide to get the mood going with electricity in our body. But he's going to get into what microcurrent therapy is, give us a little background on himself. And I'm interested more on like how he got into this particular therapy, because there's always a story behind the story. And then just getting into the nuts and bolts and the electric charges of this. So Dr. Rob, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's my favorite topic, been in my life for a long time. So you can hit me with whatever questions you have. Hopefully I'll have some answers.
Yes. And, you know, obviously I'll start off with some questions, but for everybody who's on here, definitely leave your questions in the chat, or we'll have time, you know, more towards the end where you can, unmute yourself and ask your question. So start thinking about those now and as we go through it, because this could be a newer topic for a lot of us. And just like, you know, microcurrent with Dr. Rob, he loves that therapy, loves that tool, if you will. Just like my spinal health journey. That's why I'm a spine geek, because of the effects I've had with correcting the structure of my spine. So it's not just about the pain and symptoms, but what types of therapies can you do for those? And that there's a wide array. There's tons of different techniques. That's why I want to expose you and have you explore these and implement these in your life. So Dr. Rob, first, can you just start off and tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, how did you get started? I could read your bio, but I just rather have you explain it.
Sure, yeah. So, I always explain it a little bit different than my bio does. I found people like to, you know, your marketing team's like, let's edit this and make it all, as detailed as we can. But the truth is, like, I fell into microcurrent simply because it was a part of my life from a young age, about age 9. So this is back in the 90s in England where I grew up. And I had horrible scoliosis, and I had been to an osteopath with my primary care physician, essentially. And we'd been to a chiropractor, albeit not very often, because I don't know if it's the same now, but back then it was really like chiropractors didn't really want to touch kids. And it was more like, let's wait till you grow. And we tried everything. You know, my parents are doctors of natural medicine, so they're naturopaths, right? So it's supplements, not really pharmaceutical stuff, but nothing was really helping. And my mom and dad got invited by the Russians to go to this special unveiling event of this space-age technology that would change the face of healthcare as they know it. And really, I don't think my mom or my dad believed what it would do. And this is really where microcurrent kind of entered in there. So they traveled. This course was taught by a translator, and they were bringing in patients in wheelchairs, so my mom tells it, and they were leaving not in wheelchairs. And my mom was blown away. And she was like, I need one of these things. So she bought one of these rudimentary devices. It's called a Scanner back then. And it was designed for the Russian space program. The idea was, what do astronauts do if they get hurt in space, right? So let's create this energy medicine tool. And it's kind of an automated form of microcurrent. Microcurrent's been around for a very long time. So this tool, my mom, she bought it. She brought it back home. She treated my back, and she managed to correct my scoliosis but it didn't come back. And that was the thing. I'd had adjustments and I always got some relief. But getting to that point where I was just a normal kid that wasn't in pain all the time wasn't something I believed would happen. So yeah, lo and behold, I just kind of got on with my life. And that was my experience with it. My parents adopted it as their main clinical tool. They actually moved to North America and brought the technology with them. And from there, they developed it into what we have today. And now it's US made. It's, higher quality than we had back then, more features. But for me, I went on, did my normal high school stuff. I started to learn to become an English teacher. I finished my bachelor's degree in English, kind of changed my mind, went and did a business degree. I did an anthropology degree. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And in the end, I tried to settle into helping my parents in their business because honestly, it seemed like an easy way out. They needed some help. I had a business degree. Let's help them build the business. And I was in there doing some boring accounting work, essential, mind you, but boring to me now. And my dad brought this patient in. And I had been so out of the loop because it had become such a part of my life that if I ever got hurt, I broke my wrist or something playing a sport, I was being treated, I'd just get back. It was just normal to me. So I'd forgotten the impact it can have on people, right? And this woman, she came in. She was limping down the stairs. Unfortunately, our clinic was in a basement suite, so not the most accessible for people with injuries. And I'm just sitting there, barely paying attention, typing up some spreadsheets, and I'm watching my dad out of the corner of my eye treat this woman. And then she's running up and down the stairs, and it was arthritis in the ankle. She's running up and down the stairs, and she's like, I'm going to be able to dance again. I'm so happy. And this was after like 15 minutes. And she paid my dad. She bought a device, actually. She left, and she lives a couple hours from us now, so I still hear from her to this day. But after she left, I went to my dad. I'm like, okay, so can I treat people? And he was like, no, because you don't have a medical license. So he sent me back to school again. So then I went back, and that's where I am today. I completed my doctorate and my PhD a couple of years ago now. So I'm now a doctor of natural medicine with all sorts of stuff in the background that I've done along the way. But despite all of the studies I did in naturopathic school, I focused everything I could on microcurrent. I kept trying to pivot it back around to energy medicine, frequencies, microcurrent. I'm sure I annoyed my professors something fierce. And in the end, my dissertation was on non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation for the resolution of chronic pain and chronic inflammation. So that was my journey. It's longer than it sounded there, but yeah, it just is part of your life and it just folds in, right? That's kind of how these things go.
I mean, I totally can relate to what you're saying because you're right. When you're in this, it's like how you grew up in that way.
Yeah.
When I grew up, it was my parents never took us to doctors for a cold or anything like that. It's like you got a cold, you'll get over it. We didn't go for every single thing, didn't get a pill for everything, and I want to go back. I did not realize that you had scoliosis, and that microcurrent has actually corrected the scoliosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big deal for a lot of people because with the microcurrent we use, you can tend to get results within 1 or 2 sessions. And a lot of it is like with that curve with the scoliosis, we've got kind of like this inflammation on one side, and the pushing seems to weaken the structure of the muscles on the other side. So then they don't even really know how to hold things in place properly. So we end up treating the inflammation and then hitting the other side with a different frequency to kind of straighten it up. And we've had some before and after x-rays of patients we've seen, my dad's done in the past, where they've had really bad scoliosis. I'm sure worse than mine was. And this is something, people can do at home. It is a home treatment, though it is harder to treat your own back than anywhere else on your body, for sure. But yeah, it's that correcting of the neural pathways of the body and dare I say naturally, because we're talking about an electronic device, but it is kind of a natural system.
Well, let's get into that then. Like, how does it work? because you're right. It resets, restores, balances the nervous system, the communication from, the nervous system to the body, and allows it to, again, it is a natural device because it allows the body to heal itself. It's not
Correct.
like you're introducing anything foreign into the body, because our body is electric. It's electricity. So we just take advantage, and we take advantage of our breathing and other lifestyle things that can help us get better and heal without the drugs.
Yeah, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that we are electric beings. And it gets taught in biology in high school. I think back, I remember it. It's kind of like, oh yeah, in the cells, they have this voltage level and they do this stuff, and then they move on to other stuff like blood and guts and things that people are more interested in. But that's the thing. It's kind of the forgotten piece of the human body, because everyone, whether they've been exposed to microcurrent or not, is an electric being. And you see this like, on your heart monitors and things, you see the little pulses, brain waves have these frequencies. Everything is functioning on frequencies. So we have trillions of cells in our bodies, right? Trillions. And every single one of them has a little electric charge. It's like a little battery. And when disease states occur, these cells kind of lose their voltage. They don't reach the right point, and they fail to achieve what we learned in high school at some point, which is called action potential. So the cells can no longer process and regenerate and function. Eventually, they give up, and this can lead to channelopathies, things like diabetes, blindness, anything, because the cells just all start to fail in sequence. Chronic pain, autoimmune disease fall into that function too. So when we take something like microcurrent, that's why we do say, live pain-free naturally. Because this device, it's not a magic wand. It's not a cure-all pill. What it is doing is it's taking advantage of the fact that most of our lives, our bodies have known what to do, and they've healed themselves, and we've fixed ourselves. And we've not even really had to put in much effort. It's like you said, you get a cold, you'll get over it, right? We do the same when we cut ourselves or when we break an arm. We heal and we get over it. So the question I always think we have to ask ourselves is, why suddenly at some point in our lives did something happen that prevented us from healing, or that's preventing us from healing? And so often it's that electrical piece. It can be as simple as scar tissue, which prevents the electricity of your body passing through. It could be mold exposure, electromagnetic sensitivity. It could be vaccines, dare I say. I don't like talking about that, but it could be the introduction of vaccines or viruses. I've seen similar issues from people that have had the COVID vaccine and people that have just had COVID. Like, people seem to fall into that same category with some of these health issues and sensitivities. And when you use the device, you can send the signals into the body, the same ones that your brain should be sending from point A to point B. And if you do it in just the right way, the brain thinks that it sent those signals. And so your body jumpstarts that healing process again. And we're working towards resolution through simple application of electricity to the skin. And it's something that goes beyond natural medicine, and it goes beyond medical science. It's kind of sitting firmly in the middle. I mean, our devices are FDA approved, Health Canada approved, they're approved all over the world. So they're regulated, but they're also not truly understood by these regulatory bodies either. So it's kind of this weird, middle ground that we are sitting in.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that middle realm is hard for people to understand. And that's why I wanted to have you on here, so you can try to bridge that gap. Because I always, again, being a spinal healthcare geek, chiropractor, I always tell people if we wore our spines on our faces, we'd probably take better care of it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's hidden in there. So sometimes we forget that. But I mean, what you're saying about electricity, again, it takes me back to, again, what we've learned. Like, the brain controls everything. We want to get those signals through the body so that it can heal the tissues. And I like what you're saying there too, is where, all right, sometimes there's a disconnection there, and we can almost, what I picture in my mind is bypass that if that connection isn't completely there yet, and get those signals there if they're not getting there because of some sort of interference in the spine, even, again, in my terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what it is. It's about breaking down those barriers. But, we call it pain resolution, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the pain management business because I live that, right? We want to resolve the issues. And it goes beyond pain. It does, because everything in your body it can be a dysfunction. We say we are pain-free for life. We treat chronic pain. That's one of the easiest things. But autoimmune disease, all of these things are grounded in inflammation. It's inappropriate inflammation in your body. And if something as simple as stimulating the vagus nerve can shut off that inflammation, then it doesn't particularly matter what the issue is. I think there's something like the official stats are over 80% of all disease in the world is based on inflammation, right? So
Now, because you mentioned, pain, obviously, autoimmune issues, arthritis, obviously. Where, again, questions in my head. So everybody, if you have questions, or maybe I'm going to ask the questions you're thinking of, is like, how does it work as far as not necessarily in the body, but do you have like actually the nuts and bolts how to, like with these little units, like do you put pads on the, like if it's not pain, if it is some autoimmune issue where it's more gut or more, thyroid even, do you put the pads in a certain spot? And is that, go through that.
Yeah, so the first thing is we always look at the individual person because everyone's situation is different. There's a few kind of basic gap rules. If you have scar tissue, you want to treat the scar tissue. Scar tissue acts from an electrical perspective as a capacitor. So as the electricity zaps through your body, through the nerves, hits scar tissue, it gets absorbed like a sponge. And that electricity, so that signal of turn off pain, stuck in the scar tissue. So it never makes it to where it needs to go. So we need to discharge scar tissue. Then we can start to look at actually treating the body. And so the process typically for anyone dealing with anything inflammatory, which is again, most things, is going to involve some form of vagus nerve stimulation to begin with. Because you can take the device, you can apply it to the areas that kind of hurt, and you can send those signals in. But the shortcut is the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve comes right through your neck. And when you stimulate the vagus nerve, it's been scientifically proven to block the production of inflammation in the spleen, which means the tumor necrosing factors that produce the inflammation, that create the illness, that create the disease states, it's like flipping a light switch. You can shut that process down. So over time, you can train that nerve so that it stops acting inappropriately. People in chronic pain have this issue with, and chronic disease states, this issue with being in stress mode. Because when you wake up, and I've been there in the past, when you wake up and you're not feeling in pain, you're kind of like, when's the pain going to come back? So you kind of limit yourself, you're worrying about it, it's in your mind, you create stress. The stress actually creates inflammation, makes it worse, that makes you more stressed, and we snowball down the hill. So the vagus nerve plays that double role of removing stress and helping with the inflammatory response. But beyond those general basics, the way we've set these up, these are battery operated devices, right? So they're handheld. You see it fits in the palm of my hand. 2 AA batteries will last 2 to 3 months usually, because it's such a low draw of current, right, on the body. But the way we've set it up is that everyone that gets one of our devices gets assigned a personalized treatment coordinator. So they will build a treatment plan for them based on their issues, ask them clarifying medical questions, and we'll be able to change that plan as we go through. And that to me is really important. That increased our customer satisfaction rate. It reduced our return rate drastically. We're less than 1% now. We were about 1 or 2% before, because people, they get this thing, and as simple as it is to use, they look at it and they're like, okay, I don't know where to begin. You have the books, you've got videos, but really what you want is you want someone to just say, hey, look, Marie, do this. This is what you need to do. And that's become the beauty of that, because you can get in there, you can start using the device from day one, and you can start to work to resolve those issues. And you know what? If it doesn't work within a few days, you can reach back out to the coordinator and say, hey, so this isn't working, or it's helping with this, but it's not helping with this. What else would you suggest? And you can make those changes too. So we try to do our best to guide people through the whole process and uncomplicate things. Beyond that, I know you said you had some experience with microcurrent from when you were in school, and microcurrent machines back then were pretty big, right? These big kind of countertop things. They kind of remind me of desktop computers. Now those are great. They work really well. That's where the foundation of this is. But these handheld units, they use a computer to change all the frequencies and the dials and the modes for you. So you don't have to do it. So the simplicity of this is like our base unit here has 4 programs in it. Doesn't seem like much, but it runs 185 different frequencies through those programs because the computer is changing them for you. So we've really done our best to simplify everything, especially since COVID, because it's become a call to action for people as people become more aware that they want tools in their toolbox so they don't have to rely on going to the hospital if they get sick, right? This should be the first thing they reach for. It shouldn't be a bottle of Tylenol, shouldn't be opiate medications. It should be something that can just nip it in the bud and let you get back to your life. And so we've really pivoted into that home use market and tried to cover everything we can to just make it easy to use for people.
That's beautiful. I love that because exactly what I want to do here is give people the tools, right? Or explain the tools and they can decide whether they want to try it or not. Now,
Absolutely.
one question I had as you were talking is, the vagus nerve is important. I think a lot of my community, they understand or they've read stuff or researched things about the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
And there's different low tech, I guess you could say, vagus nerve stimulation strategies. So devil's advocate, would I say, well, why would I need one of these if I could do this other stuff? And I'm going to play both sides of it, say, well, then go ahead and do that. But this is probably more effective because it's working with the actual frequencies that your body's craving and the vagus nerve is craving. And I could say this too on that other side is, well, then do it. Too often people aren't doing the simple things. Sometimes they think it has to be more complicated and having, these the current things. And maybe it just is a mindset issue where like, I need something like this to help me be consistent with it.
Yeah, consistency can be a big issue with some of those other methods. Not necessarily feeling it or knowing what it's doing can be a problem too. Like you feel microcurrent stimulation. You could probably see it. I'll show it in a second here.
That was one of my questions. Do they actually feel the pulsate? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you'll feel that pulsating. Weirdly enough, and I haven't quite figured this out, women will often feel it in their guts more than men. So whether there's just an anatomical difference in like maybe the positioning of the vagus nerve kind of gives you like a roller coaster feeling a couple of minutes in. But it's that stimulation there, the forced stimulation to me is the big deal because I'm an advocate for all these things, the gargling, meditating, deep breath work, all these things work really well. But I tell you, I've seen time and time again, it's really hard to do that if you feel crappy, if you don't feel good, right? This is a way to take the control away from your body and, give it to you as a person and away from your mind. You can force that through. I'll quickly show here like what we do for the process, if that's okay. So we have all these different attachments. So you mentioned pads. We actually use pads. We have them, but most of our tools are medical grade stainless steel electrodes. The voltage in the device means we don't need the glue in the pads to feel it. So it just makes things.
That's even better. Those pads are just,
they're a pain.
It could be a mess.
We include them because people like them, but people like the idea of them because they're like, oh, it's hands-free. But we also find when you do pads, you're looking at a 30-minute treatment versus a 3-minute treatment with this guy. So save yourself the time, right? So simply turn the device on, and I've set it to the right program. We use the alpha frequency program, so the same frequency as your alpha brainwaves. Now, the next thing I do, and I differ than a lot of these vagal nerve stimulators that you might see out there because they always talk about going through the ear. Well, the vagus nerve in the ear is actually not really that accessible from the surface because it's not in the ear, it's behind the ear, and it's in the neck, right? So we know the vagus nerve rides the back of the carotid artery. So what we do is we feel for the pulse in the neck. I always have to be quiet to find this, so bear with me a second. Okay, so once I find my pulse, I place this probe behind it, and then I go put gentle pressure and I pull forward a little bit. Now I'm going to maintain that pressure, and then I'm going to take the device and I'm going to increase the power. There's 250 varying power levels in this machine. So what I'm looking for is for me to be able to feel the current, and it feels like a little tickle. That means there's enough energy that it's bypassing my skin. So bear with me while I do that too, because again, 250 power levels. Got to go through these. Now, it takes about 10 seconds to get all the way up there, so it doesn't take very long. Okay. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see movement because I have been lazy and haven't shaved in a few days here, but you might see my neck jiggling around. I don't know if that's visible or not, but essentially what you're looking for is you're looking to feel that sensation in the neck. And the current is twitching, but I'm feeling it down here and it's moving through. So you're going to feel, because we're pushing that current into a nerve, which functions entirely on the current, we are going to feel that sensation. Now, we just try and keep the vagus nerve fairly tame. I'm letting it jump around a bit more than it usually does. So I'd normally decrease the power. I don't want it to be jiggling around too much. Then I would just kind of sit there. It's a 3-minute process. I'm trying to relax. Usually I encourage people to close your eyes, try and do a bit of breathing, do something that's going to help. The last thing you want to be doing is having it hurt. Some people are like, I should increase the power till it burns because it's doing more. Like, no, you want it to be comfortable. You don't want to create more inflammation or more of a stress state. What you really want to do is you want to relax. And if this is uncomfortable, or if your dog is chewing on your toes or something like that, it's not going to be easy for you to shift into that state. So doing some breath work can be good, closing your eyes and relaxing, or just sitting in a quiet environment in addition to this. But you take that and you force that vagal nerve change. Now, this is the left side. The left side vagus nerve is where we do the treatment for anti-inflammatory. The left side actually reaches the gut, and that's where a lot of this inflammation-based disease is from. So the left side is more gut, liver, all those things. The right side is lungs and heart. So we only ever really go to the right side vagus nerve if we're dealing with people dealing with palpitations or asthma or bronchitis, some sort of inflammatory issue of the lungs. Or people dealing with chronic migraines. Sometimes, migraine-wise, not sure why, it's just the way we go. One side of the vagus nerve will make it worse, the other will make it better. So if we start on the left and it starts to make the migraine worse, we immediately stop, switch to the right side. So that's vagus nerve stimulation. I should say that the devices are approved, again, by all these regulatory agencies, but vagus nerve stimulation is considered an off-label treatment. So it's not what they approved it for. They approved it for the treatment of chronic pain and inflammation, which is great, kind of covers all sorts of bands, but, there's not many vagus nerve covered devices specifically out there that are for sale to the general public.
Which, covered for chronic pain and inflammation. Again,
yeah.
It's okay. Well, we'll treat the symptom, or it's like the whole kind of medical system is backwards, where we'll explain what the symptom is, give it a diagnosis, and you can treat that, but you can't get to the root cause, or like how you said, the vagus nerve is one of the causes or the cause of it, of the inflammation. So yes, that's what it helps with.
Yeah, you can't really say it the right way. And it's funny because it depends on the country. America has the most strict rules. We have more clearances in Canada. And vagus nerve is actually cleared in Europe and Australia. So you get the same device wherever you are. It's just what they say thumbs up for, really.
No, that was great. Does anybody have any questions? Think of any questions. Well, I had a question for the group here. Melissa, cool. You're up first. Unmute yourself. But does anybody here have experience with microcurrent in the crowd? Think about that and give your, okay, go ahead, Melissa.
So I'm seeing an acupuncturist currently, and she's trying it for sleep, and she's starting with the vagus nerve for that sleep purpose. I've only had one treatment. She said it's a series, so I don't know what's coming, but I've never heard that it could be used for scoliosis. So here's my question, and I had to step out temporarily, so I may have missed this, so forgive me if that's the case. So my question is, you were saying that your initial treatment was to help with the pain that was coming from the scoliosis. So it treated the pain. Does it actually remove the scoliosis as well, or does that remain without pain? further, if it does remove scoliosis, is it to a certain degree, but not all the way? Like it modifies it, moderates it,
Okay.
lessens it?
Yeah. So yes, it can help resolve the scoliosis. The caveat to that is how long has it been going on? How bad is it? And how much of a degree of change are you going to get at one time? For example, if it's mild scoliosis, it's probably going to be fixed in one treatment. I've had one person who was something like 40 years of scoliosis. It was very bad. They'd never had a surgery or anything like that. And we would slowly see changes per treatment. And we do a treatment every 3 days, or they would do a treatment every 3 days. And you'd start to see that correction happening. And as long as you do the protocol properly, it does hold. Because kind of like what I said earlier is you can get rid of the inflammation easy peasy. But then if the muscles aren't strong enough to hold the spine in its new place and they're not used to that spot, it's going to take a while to strengthen those muscles up to get it to hold everything properly in place. And I mean, pain relief should be pretty instantaneous. Like, I can't really use that word. I shouldn't have, but because that's just getting that inflammation lowered. But actually getting the correction as well will obviously contribute to that pain relief and making things feel quite a bit better too.
And even to go along with that, the longer that you have the scoliosis, the more degeneration that's going to happen, the more bony remodeling that's going to take place. And how you even started this all off, Dr. Rob, talked about the scar tissue, like focusing on the scar. There's going to be a lot of scar tissue because that's, I mean, essentially what arthritis is just like the breakdown and it tries to fuse itself to hold on. So yeah, that's definitely, I think, a piece of the puzzle for that as well, is getting rid of that scar tissue.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead, Melissa.
So the connection, unfortunately, for Zoom was cutting in and out. So I just want to make sure that I caught all the pieces. For sure, it's going to help pain, which I'm fortunate I don't have any pain. And that you were saying that the correction could take place, but it depends on how long that might take per person and how frequently the treatments would. And was it that it would resolve or just be to a degree off?
It should be resolved. It really will depend again on the individual, but the goal is always to move towards that resolution.
Amazing.
Hopefully you can still hear, right? I can see the Zoom was cutting out a bit. Yeah. Yeah, so it is about resolution. And sometimes we do what we call maintenance treatments. So we might look at, okay, now we've got this fixed. Let's keep some regeneration going around that area, keep some inflammation down to stop it swinging and pushing back again in the future.
Hopefully she
heard.
Frozen. Hopefully she's
the part
heard
that I could relate most to is how to strengthen the muscles to in place. I've had throughout different years with that.
Uh-oh.
Are you back?
Melissa, try turning off your camera. Maybe that would help. I like seeing you, but I don't, because I know sometimes that saves on the
Turning off the camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now try
How's
it.
that?
Let's see.
Is that better?
I think
so far, so good.
Can you understand me here? Okay.
Yep.
I've had it be kind of a moving target. The actual bend seems to get worse or better over time without my doing things on purpose. So I definitely can relate to the part about the muscles need to just hold it in place. And that is the bigger challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder if there's if you have like a referral. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, that is for sure the thing is getting those muscles strengthened. Like I always feel like getting inflammation under control is easy. The regenerative stage requires more work and your body has to build that back up. Like we can say turn off inflammation and it's like a light switch, but rebuild years of damage. That's like calling in a whole construction crew and getting them to work on it. Right. So, that they say, I think it's a month of, in the natural world, right? It's like a month of treatment for every year of chronic pain. We don't see that statistic. Like we're seeing gradual change. Usually people are moving within a few months towards like close to resolution if they're being good with their treatment. So you're talking like 15 minutes a day of treatment. It's not like you're going to be hooked up to wires forever.
And I imagine the first part of the treatment for the inflammation is the vagus nerve, but that the other parts for strengthening the muscle, you would have to move along the spine, yes?
So you go on one side of the spine for that, but yeah, so while the vagus nerve would help with inflammation, the other thing is to just treat the actual area itself. So I can't show my own back on camera and do this at the same time, but treating the area, we call the process painting. And so the thing is when you paint the body, you're gonna get these areas of active zones. So there's areas where the inflammation is, and the device, as smooth as it may seem now, it will catch and it will not be able to move because the electrical resistance of the inflammation is so high that it's like being stuck in glue. And so then you can work those spots out. And this is why I say this versus pads. You wouldn't feel those with pads. So this takes like 3 minutes. You work the spot out. And then once it's smooth, you know you've gotten rid of that inflammation. So it will be the same as why this wand is good, is you could work on the area of the scoliosis with the wand because it adds 8 inches to your arm and get that inflammation down there. And then you could switch to the other side and hit it with the regeneration. So you kind of work on the concave versus convex side of things.
Is there a referral list where we could actually go to a person instead of doing it ourselves?
So you would have to reach out to us because we don't currently have a list on our website of practitioners. We have a new education program where we're training practitioners, but we've only just had our first few graduates and we're starting to build that up. We found that a lot of people were running off without qualifications or without knowledge and not using the devices appropriately in clinical settings. So we kind of, if you reached out to us and we had a practitioner in your area, we could send you their information, but we would have to look that up.
Thank you.
You're very
welcome. Is there
an
email address I can send them to or put it in the notes so people have it?
So support@painfreeforlife.com. It's kind of the best place to go.
That's what I figured.
Someone will be able to help. They'll probably end up asking me and say, Rob, do you know anyone in XYZ?
Yeah. Right. Great question.
This question is actually for both of you. Do you think it's safe to do strength training, resistance training to try to begin to strengthen those muscles in the back, even though there's scoliosis there? I was always afraid of like, oh, it's going to lock it in worse. But maybe just beginning to strengthen those muscles will begin to straighten it.
I always say everything in moderation is good, like starting slow and seeing. I'm not sure, depending on how bad it is, you're right. Like, I don't know whether it would make them so strong that it's harder to let go. Because I haven't really had that consideration before.
Now, have you been doing any specific, the one that are the most common, the Schroth exercises? Have you ever done those, Melissa?
I don't think so, because I don't know the name.
Okay. It's basically postural type exercises. So you're strengthening and putting the spine in the right position. So you're not strengthening the strong muscles and then continuing to weaken the weak muscles and then making the curve worse. You've been following me for a while, and I'm a big fan of spinal x-rays. Have you had spinal x-rays? You must have, right?
I have. When I was younger, they said that it's nothing you should do. It's so minor. Okay. And had a baseline about 10 years ago, just because I had some low back pain. And they said, well, we don't think it's related. It's still super mild. Look at the number of degrees. It's not even needing treatment. And then I had a bad fall on cement where I hit the side of my jaw. And I think my theory is it threw that the whole way my head was on and the spine just kind of moved over time after that fall. Because when I had x-rays like a year later, it had moved from very mild to moderate.
And that's what can happen with this different stresses that we put on the body. And I equate it to like a bent nail. Like a straight nail is strong. When you're pounding on the top, goes straight in. If there's even a mild bend in a nail and you start just tapping it, that bend gets worse. And then if you have a accident or a fall like you have, it can actually precipitate it even more. So, I mean, I always start with the spinal x-rays, and that's something you can reach out to me too, is in your area, if there's anybody that I can send you to, because there's, again, with chiropractic biophysics, retraining and doing these type of exercises, I can help you find somebody with that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on the weightlifting, strength training?
Oh, yeah. It's like what Dr. Rob said. It's like, I wouldn't do any without knowing what the curve was like. I wouldn't do any like heavy squats or, putting really anything on your back. But I mean, I think just general exercises, general like core stability exercises, the different types of planks and bridges, as long as you're co-activating in just like the ab brace, ab hollow, squats, hips and legs, again, lunges, squats. I mean, deadlift, you might have to be more careful with, but again, not using a whole lot of weight, doing more balance type activities, even like, or I shouldn't say balance, but single leg activities. So like, for example, squats, the bilateral squat, just your body weight. And then if you want to make it a little bit harder, a little bit more coordination, do split squat. So one leg in front of the other leg back. And just conditioning both sides of it, doing different mobility things for the hips and the legs. But as far as like spinal exercises or general exercises, just be careful. Don't put a lot of weight, axially down. I mean, we want a little bit, but the body weight can provide that for you right now. And until I would know what the scoliosis looked like.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else got any good questions like that?
I think scoliosis is a really interesting one, just because having worked with so many patients that have it over the years, it's something that they get to that point where they're like, surgery or nothing, right? Or just pain or discomfort, or even like Melissa said, worry about pain coming down the line, not actual pain at the moment. So yeah, it's interesting. The structural things that microcurrent can do is probably one of the most surprising things to me.
I agree with you, because when you first said that, I was like, really? Because I mean, that's one of the specialties that we have in chiropractic biophysics, because it's not just the adjustments. And with scoliosis and in getting adjusted, it can help temporarily, but it's not going to fix the curve.
No,
it has to be, some type of like with exercises, or like, again, microcurrent strengthen the muscles, but then also dealing with the ligaments that have gotten scarred and fibrotic from being in that position. Wow. And a lot of times it is a neurological issue. And again, that's probably why, again, I'm just speaking just from what you've said, it is an electrical issue. It's a nerve issue. So if we can reset the nervous system, then that communication can take place again. So with scoliosis in the chiropractic biophysics, it's using different forms of traction. And with scoliosis, people, if they've had it when they were kids, like they had these braces and they didn't really do much to correct it, but their goal with those were just to prevent it from getting worse as you went through the growing years. And too many times you hear, well, it's not bad enough yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and in the growing years, it can progress 10 to 15 degrees. So by that time, well, okay, their best option is surgery.
Yeah. And it comes out of the blue, right? It's like, there's nothing we can do, nothing we can do. Oh, we should do surgery now. Yeah. And this is one thing, like we see this even with alignment issues. And these are some of the fun ones to do on training course, because you can see the change. If you mark someone's spine with a pen and then you treat them and then you mark it again, you can see it's moved an inch. People are like, whoa, right? And it's the same with the alignment. Like, we know how many issues come from people being twisted. And when we lay someone down on a table and we pull their ankles and we try and touch them together and they're overlapping, and then we can do like a 3-minute treatment and then they touch the ankles again. And it's just from one hip, one shoulder. And the way my dad always explained it, because it's not really studied hugely, but he always said, you know what it is? It's the memory. We're using the device to interface with the nervous system to remind the brain of what it should be doing, and to get the brain to do that. Because so much of what we do with our bodies is subconscious and it's passive and we don't even know, right? I mean, like right now, I'm sitting on a chair with one leg under my butt. Is that terrible for my posture? Absolutely. But it just happens to me. And so now I have to correct it. And, I'm going to work on things like that all the time myself, because I spend so much time in front of a screen. and my habits of what's comfortable is not what's good for me, right? And so
I love
and I
that
just went to
line.
fix
Yeah.
myself again and put myself back in that position. So yeah.
And you're right. It is like it's the unconscious, subconscious nature of our habits. I mean, that's why they're habits, because they're just automatic.
Yeah.
And it's not just about gritting your teeth. And that's why, like, exercise just in general for scoliosis, it can improve it, but because you can't always consciously be in that position, then you have to be thinking about it 24, well, not when you're sleeping, but 16, 17 hours a day, and you don't have the bandwidth. And again, what sounds like the microcurrent does, it resets and retrains the memory, so you don't have to consciously think about it all the time. It's the same principle we use with traction. We have to retrain the body, retrain the spine, similar to how braces do on teeth. It's one little push, like you might get with an adjustment, it's not going to straighten the teeth. So that's, again, what we specialize in. We're like the orthodontist versus a dentist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time, and I want to appreciate your time here, Dr. Robin. Yeah, I would, if anybody's interested in getting one of these units, how can they go about getting one?
Yeah,
if they're comfortable enough to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would do is I'll suggest I'll send, because you're going to send out a replay, right?
Yeah.
So I did put together a little special bundle just in case, just for this event. So I could send you a link to that, and you could share that by email. Then I don't say a link out loud that's confusing and doesn't go anywhere in people's minds. And yeah, I mean, really the goal of this was to educate people. So I didn't come prepared with a whole big presentation or anything like that, but I just wanted to introduce microcurrent to as many people as possible. So I appreciate that opportunity for sure.
No, I love this. Any more questions before we sign off?
I wonder if Dr. Rob moved his leg out from under him, because it looked like his posture shifted for a moment.
I'm crossing my legs now, but I still don't know if that's good. I have one leg on my knee, but I'm not sitting on it again. I'm trying something different. Thanks for being for policing me.
I just noticed before you're even saying it, I have been watching your own body posture, and then when you said it, something shifted. So I thought, well, maybe he moved it.
Well, and it's funny because I am the biggest, and I'm so hard on my patients about it, and then I do these things myself, right? Like the one thing I don't do that they do is putting their wallets in their back pockets. Yeah. And then I'm like, you're just shifting yourself up all the time. But yeah, for me, crossing my legs, and it's just passive, like crossing them or sitting on them. And I know, and I can see it. That's why when I'm on Zooms like this and I'm actually able to look at myself on the camera, I'm like, what am I doing? Oh, I'm doing that. Huh? Better fix that. So yeah, I've been considering getting a standing desk or something, so I don't have that option.
That's what I got. And you're right. That's now one thing I will throw in here, since we're talking about posture. It's like we hear posture, and everybody, I can't see anybody but Melissa, like everybody sits up straight when you mention posture, right? Fixes the posture. Breathing. All right. We talk about breathing. All of a sudden everybody, hey, I wasn't breathing there. So yeah. But yes, standing desks, I love these. That's what I got here. You can do stretches with them, can do all sorts of good stuff. But I appreciate this. I hope everybody else loved this one. This is a great one. I love the practical nature of like showing people how to do it and how it works, but then even explaining how it works even at a electrical level and resetting our electric system essentially.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. There's so many systems of our bodies, and this is just one of them, but it can be a big one because it's the one that we don't know how to care for, right? There's not really many answers out there. Beautiful.
Well, so yes, if you're watching the replay, or if you're here now, I'll send out an email probably tomorrow. I don't want to my goal is tomorrow, since he's got that bundle for us, but definitely if not then Wednesday, just I'm in my brick and mortar office on Tuesday. So if you notice, that's why you don't always get an email from me on Tuesdays. But I want to try to get this one out to you, so then you can take advantage of this. And if you're watching the replay, same thing. Hope you enjoyed this. Again, it's all about being your own guarantee for your health and your life. And Dr. Rob definitely helped us out with that today. So everybody, have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.